a lot of people have watched this particular presentation have been the wives and things and husbands of people that work in large law firms. And this presentation is focused on large law firms and sort of the problems that it can cause in relationships. But, depending on the law firm that someone works in, it could certainly apply to all law firms where people are working. And it kind of gets into the psychology of being an attorney, how it works at different size firms, and how you may or may not be happy in that environment. So it's the whole presentation is actually quite negative from the standpoint that it's talking about a lot of negativity of practicing law. It's also going to highlight a lot of the experiences and things that people have that are working in law firms that make it very difficult for them to have good relationships and also good lives. In the period I've been doing this, attorneys that I know that are at the largest law firms, there are ones that are able to kind of manage all these things, and then there are ones that aren't. So this presentation is going to go into a lot of detail today about these things, and I hope it's helpful for you. I think it is. It is one of those presentations where if you understand these things, it can actually help you lead a much more healthy and happier life, or even get into another practice setting, or kind of avoid all these things that you may be having with your relationships or will have in the future if you choose to practice law in large or very competitive law firms. So that's what we'll talk about today. It's a live presentation. So at the end of the presentation, I will take questions. And as I'm making this presentation, you can certainly ask any questions you want at the end of the presentation, and I will take answers to all of them as long as it takes. So, in my experience and what I've seen, a high number of people in large law firms end up getting divorced. Statistically, it's a much higher percentage of people that get divorced in large law firms than other professions. And it's also, much higher than the public in general. I remember when I started at my career at a large litigation firm, there were only a couple of exceptions at the time, people that had not been divorced, actually. And then later on, the same people that hadn't been divorced ended up getting divorced. So the divorce rate among, for example, litigators is higher probably than other practice areas, but there's exceptions to that as well. So, if you're practicing law right now at a large law firm, it's important, or considering it, it's really important to understand like how this can affect your home life, how it can affect, your relationships with your spouses, and then also how it can affect your relationship even with your children. And it's very difficult if you're working in large law firms to stay married for a long length of time, just because of the unique stresses that people there have. So, I think that a lot of people would like to think this is wrong. They think it's wrong when they're getting into the profession, but then they, very quickly realize that it can, a divorce is something that can happen. And divorce is serious because if you have kids, it's very, very serious. And if you get divorced and you're making a lot more money than your spouse, in some cases, I know an attorney that is renting a property for me, and he was married for 12 years, and now he has to support his spouse for the rest of her life. So these sorts of things can happen, and it can be, very serious when you get into when this happens. A lot of times people will get married very early in their careers, or right when they're in law school. And then by the time they're in a position where they're a partner and so forth, or even before, they end up getting married. So if you are working in different types of practice settings, like sometimes people will go to do things like work in the Social Security office in small markets, which is actually a pretty good job, but attorneys working in large law firms, often, don't understand that. And people that work in the largest markets in the largest cities can be even more stressful on relationships. I was talking to a partner, very good, like mid-sized firm in New York on, I was talking to her on Saturday, and she told me that, for the past several years, she's been getting to work at 9 a.m. and, more often than not, leaving around 1:30 and just doing the same thing over and over again. And it was funny, I also talked to another attorney that was older, and when he got out of Columbia Law School, he graduated like second in his class, and he said to an attorney that he was interviewing, what do you do to have fun besides work? And then the guy said, every Sunday, I put on jeans and a t-shirt and I walk through Central Park to my job. And that was like his fun thing that he did on the weekend. So, this is literally the truth for a lot of, attorneys, and some people thrive in that sort of atmosphere and other people don't. But, the other thing is that if people think that maybe there's difference between being a partner and associate, and maybe if they make partner, things will be better. And in reality, the stress that partners face is even more difficult than those of associates and counsel. So the farther you go, often the more stressful and the more detrimental, the job. So making partner isn't something that often leads to happiness because there's more stress, the hours are longer, and it's even harder to hold on to a job when you're a partner than when you're associate, unless you're able to continually maintain a large book of business. And what happens to a lot of attorneys as well, which is something that you don't think about, is people will sit there and they will work very, very hard for 8, 10, 12 years, just incredible hours, and then they will become a partner, but they'll become an income partner, and the law firm will give them a runway of maybe 1 to 3 years to get business. And if they don't, then all of a sudden they are in a position where they need to look for a new job, which is very, very difficult to do when you're a senior with no business. And then that leads to divorces as well. So even success can create problems. These divorces, when people make income partner, are because in many cases their income is threatened. Their lifestyle is threatened, their stability is threatened, their ability to have upward momentum is threatened, their self-esteem is threatened, their ability to get jobs without business, whether it's in law firms, is threatened. Often they take in-house jobs which don't pay well. So everything becomes threatened often when people become partners. And so, I'm going to list some of the reasons that the job can be so stressful and people get divorced. This is not just about getting divorced. It's about the levels of stress that people face when they're in these positions. And, it's a lot to think about today. So the first thing, and the reason why it's so difficult for people to maintain relationships is because people become much more closely aligned with work than they are with their relationships. They are people that, especially in large law firms, that are, have done very, very well most of their lives in academics and, in firms and things, and they have no interest in failing once they reach a large law firm. One thing I should note too at the outset that's very interesting is people that practice in smaller, less competitive markets are much less likely to have these problems. The work ethic is often much different, especially in much smaller markets. People that don't practice in big firm practice areas, which would be often consumer-facing practice areas like personal injury and immigration, trust in the states, family law to some extent, they often lead much less stressful lives and have better relationships. So a lot of it is your choice of how competitive you are. So if you're not as competitive, then often your life is going to be much better, and you will continue practicing law over time than you might if you were working in a large law firm. So what happens in large law firms is they're very, very good at getting the highest profits per partner they can. They're very, very good of creating an atmosphere that makes the most money. They're very, very good at creating an atmosphere where it's up or out. They're very, very good at making sure that they do all these things to ultimately provide the best work quality for their clients, but also to make people money. So, when you're at a large law firm, this game can become all consuming because you don't want to lose, and you want to be the successful person there. So being the successful person there means you have to dedicate your heart, body, and soul and all of your life force as much as you can to succeed. And so, once you've started working in a large law firm, you have what are called sunk costs, meaning you don't want to leave, because if you leave, you're going to lose everything that you've done. And also, what you should be aware of is if you leave a large law firm and go into another practice setting, with some exceptions, which might be like clerking for a federal judge. But if you go into just a regular government position, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a position back in a law firm, for example. Or if you go in-house, it's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult to get back into a large law firm. So once you're there, attorneys know that if they leave, they're going to have a very hard time. At this particular point in history, I'm seeing every day hundreds of government attorneys submitting their resume on BCG Many of them were at large law firms before. Now they're working remotely for jobs they're living in Colorado and things and working for jobs in Washington, D.C., where they've been fully remote. Many of them went to large law firms and then left. And now they're in these positions where, what are they going to do? I mean, they've had these remote jobs. They don't necessarily translate into working in a law firm and they're in trouble. So, I mean, they're in big trouble because a lot of them are losing their jobs. So, once you get into a large law firm and you spend all your time there, in order to stay there, you're just managing all of these political and social minefields on a daily basis to get ahead. And these are all sunk opportunity costs, and they're very important. I was talking to an attorney just yesterday who is a partner at a large law firm in New York, and he was only a partner because he was helped by another partner that had this huge book of business, and that partner's getting older and losing his book of business. And as he's losing his book of business, he's got into all these political fights with other attorneys in the law firm, and he's kind of on the out. And so this attorney has been there for 20 years as a partner, and suddenly is losing his job. So he's someone that did very well, managing political type things for a while, for a long time, but now he's kind of in trouble because he doesn't have a book of business. And so what large law firms offer people, and it's just absolutely true, is that they offer them a lot of money and they also offer them a lot of prestige. So most attorneys at any law, or law students at any firm in the country or any school in the country would be interested in a large law firm. Now I'm saying most, meaning more than 50%, but if they could get a job in those firms, they would want to, and that helps them feel prestigious compared to other students. And then they know that they're part of the higher level of attorneys working in law firms. And so, I mean, in the legal profession. So, the firms offer so much money and prestige that, they can use that, they can get the best attorneys to work for them. And lots of attorneys do. And the best of the law firms will only allow the best of the best to work there. So the typical attorney who goes to work in a law firm is there because the money and prestige is important to them. Now, also the quality of work is important. You work on more important matters in large law firms typically. And so that's a positive, but then you get better experience because you can bill more hours, you can work and go into more detail on things. But in general, the prestige and things are important. And the most highly motivated attorneys that go to large law firms often work very hard in college and law school, and they're very smart and highly motivated. What I've noticed is a lot of the attorneys in the largest law firms have somebody in their background, whether it's a parent or someone that they encountered along the way, that makes them often want to prove something to someone. And they often care a lot about what other people think of them. They prioritize that more than they would even, other things, even their happiness. I had an interesting experience that kind of showed me that years ago, that I was working with this woman who had been in a major law firm in New York for 3 or 4 years. And then she had, her husband had to move to Rochester, New York. So I helped her get a job in interviews in Rochester, New York. She got an offer from what I considered the best law firm, or probably the best in upstate New York, Harder Seacrest. And I was talking to her about this offer, and she said, this firm is not at the caliber of where I work. I would look very bad to other people that I worked with if I were to accept a job there. And so she actually ended up turning down the job because she was more concerned about how she looked to others, and decided to not work at all. So I just thought that was crazy. But she looked at moving to a smaller firm as failing, and it's just unbelievable. You would leave the practice of law because you move someplace with with smaller firms. So attorneys are just consistently motivated to keep trying. And the things that they show that law firms do to keep attorneys very, very highly motivated and doing the best work is they constantly fire low performers. So the people that aren't doing the best or aren't politically connected in the right way are not getting the best hours. When there's different things that happen to the law firm in terms of losing clients or not having enough work. It could just be the economy. You never know. They will lay people off, and the people that get laid off are people typically that don't work the hardest or do the best work. The largest law firms make very few partners. So you could start out with a class of 100 people in a law firm, and maybe 2 would be there and make partners after 7 or 8 years. So that's something that motivates people. They know they have to give all they can to the law firm in order to succeed. They will give bonuses to people based on their hours. So people will compare their bonuses, and the people with the biggest bonuses will typically be the people that build the most hours. They will fire people that don't have enough hours. So if you go to a law firm and say peers are all billing 2,000 or more hours per year, and you're billing like 1,700, they will often fire you. The reason that people fire people for low hours is not just because of working fewer hours. They fire them because if they're not working more hours, then it shows that they're not as good at getting work or impressing people to give them enough work to be a top performer. And so when you have a lot of work, that typically means that you're doing a good job. So people will often not turn down work because they want to always impress people and have a lot of work, which is the situation that people get into when they start billing like 3,000 hours a year and stuff, which happens. They give the best work typically to the most favored attorneys. So when important matters come in or there's important things to do, there'll always kind of be an A team that's used for those matters, and they will give them the most important work. So you could be a fourth or fifth year associate and writing very important summary judgment motions and things if you're in litigation while your peers are doing discovery, meaning they're just responding to document requests and things. Attorneys that bring in work are always rewarded. And if you don't have work in a large law firm and you're senior, you're treated like second-class citizens. I speak with at least once every 2 weeks or so, people that are counsel or things are very senior in large law firms, and they are actually paid. I mean, you can't believe it. They are paid the same thing as first year associates. And I saw that repeatedly throughout my career. I would talk to people even 25 years ago when I was starting this profession. I would talk to people that had been had been at a law firm for a while, whatever the law firm is. And the law firm was literally, they were calling them a partner, but paying them the same as first year associates, which happens if you don't have work. It's actually very scary. And another thing that happened earlier in my career is there was a shortage of real estate openings because of interest rates and things back in 2000. And I had an attorney that was actually offered a job paying less than a first year associate, maybe 15 years of experience. And when I asked the law firm why they were paying him so little, they said because they could, because they knew that they were the only firm, one of the only firms would hire him. And then, and then law firms will constantly hire lateral attorneys to compete with those that are there. So they'll bring in laterals that will work even harder because they have something to prove. And all of a sudden they're in competition with the existing attorneys that thought they were doing well. Sometimes they will do things to attorneys to get them to work harder. They may not give them work for a while with the expectation that, once they do get work, they're going to work even harder and do a better job. There'll be all these classes of different attorneys that are favored and unfavored. Some of the attorneys will be working with the highest profile partners in the firm, others won't. So that will create different classes, which is very stressful for attorneys. They'll create all sorts of issues for attorneys making bad social or work-related mistakes. So people are always watching you. If you do anything negative, it will always often be used against you. I saw one attorney that was a partner at an equity partner at a major US law firm, and he had gone to a Christmas party, and as he was getting into a taxi outside the party, he had slipped and fell, and everyone used that against him to say he was too drunk at this event. That put him in a really bad situation. He said he wasn't drunk, and that was used against him by the firm as if that, he was unfit to be there. You're constantly, being watched, and you're constantly having things used against you. And you're constantly feeling like whatever you're doing is not enough. It's not good enough. And that can create a lot of stress as well. People that don't have the right enough business or hours. So you could be a like a partner, and suddenly your business isn't as much, and the firm will be very harsh with you. You could have been there for 15 years, and they'll move you from an equity partner to a non-equity partner. And sometimes when you're a partner, your compensation can be cut for basically no reason at all. Maybe the law firm, the partners that are higher up than you want to make more money, and they'll cut your compensation. And so there's all sorts of internal competition, and the partners are trying to undermine each other. Associates are trying to undermine each other. And I've talked to people. I have a friend that retired from a large law firm when he was very young. He was about 48. And when he retired, he was making, I mean, these numbers are true. I mean, and he didn't have a huge book of business. He was making $7 million a year and still quit. And the reason he quit was because he said that it was just too stressful. Like it was enough stress to have to please the clients, but it was even more stressful, like partners and things trying to undermine him. And he said that, when you get there, the firm is your enemy often, the people you work with. And so even, in the best law firms, and the highest performers, the firm may constantly be telling the attorney to improve. They'll tell them what's wrong with them. They'll put them on pins and needles. And the cycle of that is typically when an attorney's in their first 1 to 2 years, they will often get, if there's not huge amounts of work that they need them for, they'll often get reviews that are quite scary. Then attorneys become pretty competent and profit making for the firm, like after 2 years. So like between 2 and 6 years or so, they'll give them good reviews, and then all of a sudden, the reviews may start getting very, very negative as a person gets senior. So you think you're doing well, and then all of a sudden you're not. When an attorney gets senior, it's much more difficult for the firm to give them work because they're billing, at a higher rate compared to the partners. But attorneys will constantly be doing whatever they can to get approval from people higher up, and that creates a lot of stress. It is kind of what you would call a codependent relationship, and what that means is you're in a position where the person is constantly telling you you're not good enough, and you constantly are trying to improve. Many times, it's just kind of an aside. A lot of attorneys will have grown up in situations where their parents and things, or their caregivers, would never tell them they're good enough, and so they had to keep trying and trying. And so, as an attorney is there for a while, I mean, they keep trying harder and harder to do what's expected of them by this parent, which is the firm, and it can become incredibly dysfunctional because the attorney, in order to please that parent, will do whatever they can. They'll disregard their health, their psychological health, their spouse, more to please the law firm and be on their good side, even though that parent could effectively cut them off and say they're not their parent at any point in time. So this is kind of what goes on. There's just a lot of drama. When an attorney is going through all this drama and the stress that I've talked about so far, when they get home, they do not have the right energy for a relationship. They're completely taxed out, and do not want to be, it becomes very, very difficult to do that. And even when they're home, they're thinking about all these things that have happened the day before, that day, and that creates a lot of stress. They don't have the energy to be supportive of others or to put into a relationship. And the mate, which, for example, I mean, I don't know if it's man partner dealing with a woman, who's his wife or significant other. She may want to talk about emotional issues and things when he gets home, and he just has no interest in that. He doesn't want to, do these things because of all the things he's been or she's been doing at work. So emotional support is not something that either male or female attorneys may be that good at, and for their spouses, because they're dedicated to this very high stakes, stressful game. And with spare time, because work is often all they know, they would often prefer to be billing to something than watching television or doing a date night or so forth. And going to kids' sports games and things at night is not often a priority. But I know some very, very successful partners that are able to control all this and are kind of the top of their game. And they do go to sports games and things. So this is not something that happens with all attorneys, but it happens with a lot of them. The relationship becomes mainly to the law firm and not their spouse. And then the law firm has put them in a situation where the law firm and work there takes precedent over anything that's happening, outside of the attorney's personal life. And then the attorney is just so attracted to the prestige and the money of being accepted by the law firm that they will continually be involved in this high stake game until the law firm lets them go, or they realize it makes no sense, or they continue doing it. And again, not everybody falls into this. A great number of attorneys don't fall into this, but a lot of them do. So the second one, that I've already kind of touched upon is, while trying to navigate the law firm, the attorney also needs to be effective for their clients. So not only is a law firm creating stress, which probably for a lot of attorneys is less stress than the demands of the work but the clients will need precedent over everything else. That means working weekends. It means responding to text and emails all weekend. It means being ready to work all night if it's necessary. And when they do get this kind of work, the attorneys are not resentful of the firm for giving them the work, or the client giving them work. It just gives them the opportunity to work harder and bill more hours and make more money. So this is one reason why when they talk about law firms being such stressful places to work, is that the law firm is doing everything it can to meet the client's needs. And at some firms, I remember I was talking to a guy, this is my first firm, and I don't know if they still do it, but he was talking about how he worked at Skadden in Los Angeles, and the firm actually had shirts of all sizes, like white shirts people could put on when they've worked all night. So they had a room full of all these shirts, and you could just go grab one if you worked all night. And so all this stuff takes precedent. The clients take precedent, and the more client issues the attorney gets, like the more work, the better they're doing, because they have more work that they can bill. They have a larger book of business, and the more busier they are, the more money they make. And having lots of hours gives you employment stability, and having these hours just means that you're succeeding. So an attorney that's billing 2,000 hours is succeeding 50% more than an attorney that's billing 3,000 hours. And the needs of clients are important. So if you have a client and you want to go on vacation, that's going to take precedent. The client's going to take precedent over you enjoying your vacation. It's the same thing with weekends, birthdays, and all these things that average people look forward to. And if you're a spouse of someone like this, you're going to realize at some point that you're not the priority, that the clients are, and that the firm is. And that obviously is not something that people like. An attorney could have been, early on in a marriage or a relationship with someone, that person might have been the priority, but then that person falls off and they realize that they're never going to be the priority. And why would they want to be in a relationship with someone that can't be there for them? So, and then the cost of failing in a law firm are much greater than failing in a relationship. So, if an attorney fails in a large law firm, the more senior they get, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get a job if they don't have business. If they fail at the law firm, their reputation could be harmed. It's not easy to get back on their feet. And then once an attorney starts succeeding, they have all these sunk costs because they've been advanced. They've gotten, other people have left and gotten fired. They have made it a certain length in their career without failing. And so to leave would be failure. So they've won political victories. They've gotten people to give them work. They've found mentors. And so why would you leave, if you have all this sunk costs? So you don't, and you have to make it a priority. And again, all these things that people did to get where they are, which means working hard in college, doing well in your LSATs, interviewing well and getting a job in a large law firm. That's a lot of work that went into this one job, into getting it. And why would you want to fail there? And why would you leave? And this is something that a high proportion of attorneys do. They realize that success has too much cost, and often the attorneys in large law firms, instead of just going to another firm, will just go in house because they don't want to play the game. They don't realize that they could probably have a good career practicing law in a less stressful environment in a law firm, but most of them don't. Law firms, they're working for a large law firm, you have status, that's something that's impressive to other attorneys. They get success in society and they make money, and so they are desirable mates. They look like desirable mates. It's often not too hard for them to meet new people because of their financial success, and just telling you that attorneys that get divorced typically have lots of people that are interested in a relationship with them in a very short period of time. And so that's one of the things it's interesting too. Also, and this is kind of another side, is when attorneys meet each other, they're always like kind of feeling each other out. So they may bring up where they went to law school, and if the attorney didn't go to a good enough law school, they kind of feel badly about that. Often they make excuses to the other attorney why they went to that law school. They say they got a full ride or something. Then the other attorney will feel around and figure out what kind of firm they work at, and then they'll make judgments about them because of that. So when attorneys meet other attorneys, they love talking about big firms they're at, the schools they went to, if they have it, and if they don't, the attorney that doesn't have those qualifications and so forth may often feel inferior to that sort of attorney, and so the attorneys are even more conscious of what a law firm, what law firms are, and the prestige that they have. And so, but again, when people become single, it's often pretty easy for them to meet people. Whereas an attorney that loses their job, will often not be in a good position. And again, I mentioned earlier, and I don't know the need to discuss this again, but there's just a tremendous emotional and financial toll on attorneys when they get divorced, especially with children. It can impact them very, very negatively, but they feel that their job is just too important, and they don't want to lose it. So these games kind of become all-consuming, and the best attorneys and the biggest firms will often prioritize that over most other things. And when I talk about people not having a hard time meeting people, they typically don't, because they're very successful and looked up to in society. They can be good providers. They have jobs that look stable. All these sorts of things make them desirable to a lot of people. And then one of the personality traits of attorneys is they're always doing things, fighting with other people. So a litigator is arguing with opposing counsel. They're arguing with judges. They're arguing with their peers, and so there's always this kind of drama going on for attorneys, and often the largest firms. And it doesn't matter the practice area. It could be corporate, where they're trying to argue with someone about different clauses and contracts. It's just happening day in and day out. So attorneys are fighting with other people in their firm, but they're also often doing work that's contentious with their clients. Even a patent attorney is contentious, even though it would seem very scientific and so forth, because they're fighting with the patent and trademark office to get patents approved, or trying to undermine other people's patents and doing all these things. So every practice area in a large law firm can be, very difficult. Having all this combative stuff going on will just come home. I mean, if you're a combatant, which most attorneys are to some extent, then you're going to become a combative person, and that's going to happen when you get into relationships. You will not just stop being combative. The good attorney will bring that home And that's not a fun person to live with or be around. And so that's a lot of the personality that people become, are something that comes home with them. And then the large law firm attorneys, often the best attorneys, are often quite, unstable. They become paranoid because they're worried about people trying to undermine them or get something, from them, meaning the firm could, or people in the firm are playing games with them, and then the client may, there may be things going on and so all this emotion and anger and paranoia comes home, and you're gonna have fights about the stupidest things, like a sock left on the floor or whatever. And spouses don't like that. I mean, you wouldn't like that either. And so that also is something that's brought home. And so there is paranoia, and in the office, again, attorneys are playing all these games to undermine each other, try to get a leg up, and they do it with clients. They do it, with superiors. People like associates will go to partners that they're getting work from, and they will, if some other associate they were doing work with didn't do a great job on something, they will try to bring that up so the partner knows. They'll bring it up in a subtle way. It's just everywhere you turn, people often are out to get you, and so that would make you paranoid. And this paranoia is not just from what happens at work; it's by the fact that when you're dealing with opposing counsel or co-counsel, they will also play games. They will play all sorts of games on whatever. It will be games on, you know, anything. It could be, deadlines and not responding, and then responding vaguely to things. And so, when you're dealing with opposing counsel, you could be dealing with all sorts of games, all sorts of things, and often, like, people that are the best divorce lawyers are very good at these games. But people that are the best corporate attorneys and litigators are best at these games. These games are happening everywhere the attorney turns, and it becomes makes you very paranoid, because clients that you're working with, even as an associate, are have there's outside counsel for other attorneys on the other side, and they're playing games. And then sometimes you may be doing work for a law firm for their general counsel, and the general counsel doesn't want to use the law firm anymore. You prefer to get someone else, but he's got to show their law firm did something wrong. So they will look for games and things you may have done there, and it just gets worse and worse over time. Partners become suspicious of other partners, so people will bring in work to a firm, and someone else will try to say that they should get the work. So there's certain firms that have these origination rules that if one of the partners ever knew this client, even if you were the person to bring them in and they only knew the client like 20 years ago, they will get credit for that. So then they'll fight about origination. They will become paranoid that if they don't do certain things well, the firm will cut their compensation. And it just becomes paranoid at every level. The associate becomes very worried that they're not going to make partner unless they do everything right. It just goes throughout the entire law firm environment, where clients, the firm, everyone kind of around them, their peers are trying to look better and do all sorts of things to make themselves look better, finding errors and all sorts of things that just create all sorts of paranoia. And, in general terms, if you were feeling that way, if you were feeling paranoid, if most people were, they might get a therapist or go see a psychiatrist or start exercising or meditate and things. But the problem with all this is that, people don't want to have to go spend a few hours in the gym, because they'll lose billable hours, or they meditate, they'll lose time working. And so they don't really do the things that would help the normal person deal with this incredible stress, paranoia, to kind of clear their head. They just don't do anything. They may drink or use drugs, which is very common, but they may not do the things that, that most people would do in that situation. And then, this is another thing that's pretty scary for me. So a lot of large law firms, attorneys, and also their spouses will have affairs, and in the law firm be paranoid that their spouses are having affairs. And a lot of time they're right. Then not all the time, but a lot of time. I mean, a spouse of an attorney, is spending all their time without the attorney. When they talk to the attorney, the attorney is not a pleasant person to be around. And so the person will be seeking someone that shows them love and thinks they're important and is nice to them. Like, it's not really surprising that that happens. I remember, this is a horrible story. I shouldn't even tell it. And I kind of feel badly telling it, but I was in a bar when I was maybe 22 years old. And I was sitting next to this guy, and I was talking to him. And at the time I was talking about a fight I had with my girlfriend, and he was like a police officer or something. And he said, and he was kind of cool. He was wearing a leather jacket and good looking guy. And he said, the key to getting along or getting women to like you is to be mean to them, because if you're mean to them, they'll keep trying to, they'll never be like you. They'll never feel, they'll always want to please you. And then he started talking about how he was sleeping with the wives of two associates at different big law firms. And I remember thinking about it, like, when you mean to someone and they'll like you more and try harder. And spouses, these law firms having, affairs with this guy. I don't know how he met them. And it was just always kind of a disturbing thing when I heard that. It always was kind of in the back of my mind, you can manipulate people that way. And it's just not a nice thing. There's also this guy named Neil Strauss that's written these books about how to hook up with women and things. And he actually was, for some reason, he was following the band. I think it was Motley Crue I don't know, to write a book about them or something. And he noticed all these kind of nerdy guys in the band that had these gorgeous girlfriends. And he kind of studied how they did it. And he too said that the way to, his whole book is about something called negging, where you put someone down and they like you. And that was his big thing that he learned from that. And he started teaching courses and wrote all these books. And the reason I bring him up is he came to my attention about 6 months ago, because I was looking for a house, and it's his house. It was a rental house because I was doing some work in my house. I needed a place to go, and very nice house, probably like a $10-15 million house, all from teaching them. So, people in relationships need comfort. They need to feel good. So the attorney, because they go home and they have all these problems, is often looking for the same thing the spouse is. So they actually have a lot of affairs too. And I just see this all the time, so if someone's working 60 hours a week, they may suspect their spouse is, meeting people other than the attorney, and they're often right. Attorney will say that they're working late and have some relationship on the side. So all this time, with other people at work, because they don't have good relationships outside of work, with their spouses or whoever, then they often will meet people at work, and they'll be their friends, and then those will lead to something. I've seen tons of attorneys, legal secretaries, paralegals, other attorneys that they meet. It's actually very common. I couldn't believe it. When I was a first year associate, there was another associate that I knew that was also a first year associate, and she was having an affair with a very important partner. Like, they would take trips together, work late together, get a hotel, like buy the office together. I couldn't believe it. I saw this as a first year associate and another associate, and then all sorts of things happening with secretaries and paralegals, and just all this stuff happening. So and the attorneys that were married. So what's going on. So again, all the reasons, attorneys affairs outside of the work, in work, just all these sorts of things. So that often happens. And sometimes, a lot of times, these affairs in work will lead to the attorney getting fired because uh, the people that they're having affairs with, if they're junior to them, and they have control over giving them work, if it gets out to the firm, then the firm will fire them. If they break the relationship off, then the person they were having an affair with will often sue them. I had an incident happen a few years ago. It was a partner in Chicago, and he was losing his job at a large firm. He had a $20 million book of business, which is very good for any attorney. I mean, it's exceptional. And he had had a affair with a paralegal that wasn't even working for him. That he just, I don't know how they got this relationship, but he'd been having an affair with a paralegal, and that paralegal, uh, the boyfriend of the paralegal, she had had a boyfriend, even though they were, the relationship had broken off 3 years ago. The boyfriend called up the firm and said, he was having an affair with her and all these sorts of things. And he had an affair with her, and he actually ended up losing his job. And he called me and was like, before you represent me, I need to tell you exactly, what happened to me and everything. And so when I approach firms, just basically having to say he was had a short length of time to get a new job. When this came out, no one would hire him. So he went and started some kind of business with a friend of his, which is crazy after having been employed in a large law firm, having a huge book of business, and seemingly very employable, but just because something negative in his background that happened, that wasn't good. So in most large law firms, most attorneys can't be transparent. They can't show weakness with each other. And if they do show weakness, they're not respected from the time they're in law school till they become attorneys. They learn not to show any weakness with each other, and not to show their clients' weaknesses. So what does that mean, and why is that kind of endemic to the legal profession in particular? Well, in the legal profession, if you are representing anybody, it could be a killer that's chopped someone's head off on video. Even if you're representing someone like that, you certainly don't go into court and try to acknowledge a person's weaknesses. You just go into court and you take a side on something, and that's what attorneys do. They take sides on, whether they're doing a corporate contract or whatever it is. They're on one side arguing with another, and if they have show any weakness with that opposing person, whether it's a judge or whoever or a client, they're not doing a good job. And so the attorneys also can't show their clients' weaknesses, and it's just sort of fundamentally grounded in the legal profession. People, when they're looking for jobs, the last thing in the world they want to do is show weakness, like they had done something wrong. They avoid showing weaknesses almost at all costs. They have to. So if you're showing weaknesses, means things like talking about problems that you have, health problems. They may not want to talk about that, or going to see a psychologist. They wouldn't want to talk about that, or drinking too much. They don't want to talk about that. They have to keep all this stuff hidden, because if they don't, then people will use it against them. And this is what they learn. And, so it comes from, I think, just some sort of DNA that runs through the legal profession. I mean, you learn it early on when you're doing moot court and all this sort of thing. You can't do it. You learn to take a side. And if you show too much weakness, then people will use that to their advantage. They will use it against you, or you will fail at something. Attorney that talks about weaknesses with a client isn't going to be respected. They're not going to be respected with their law firm. And so this is just very important for attorneys, especially at large law firms. And so they still are afraid to show weaknesses with their spouses, meaning they don't want to, say things that, that's not going to show weaknesses. They withhold. And so, if you can't show weakness, then often people don't like you or care about you as much. I mean, that's just what relationships are about. And so not having that connection with other people where you're voicing your weaknesses effectively, is not good, and it creates obviously problems because they're holding everything inside instead of showing that weakness. And if you have your guard up all the time, then it's very difficult for other people to relate to you. And often they'll let their guard down by drinking or using drugs. It's the only way they know how to do it. But having your guard up all the time is not good. So, and this is just another thing. This is what attorneys are taught to do. They're taught to zero in on issues that can make them win. This is what very, very good attorneys do. They will take small issues and make them large ones. They will try to portray their other people they're up against. They'll zero in on inconsistent arguments or problems with it. They'll magnify it. And this is a very good characteristic for attorneys to have. I mean, that's what you're taught, in law school. I mean, the whole case method is about reading cases and seeing where the conclusions are in the case and learning to spot issues and all this sorts of thing. But this does not make people good in long-term relationships. And they do this with everyone, and they are able to point out weaknesses and undermine others and all the sorts of things that doesn't necessarily result in positive relationships outside of work. And a lot of attorneys actually are very good at turning this off. Like even though they're able to spend 12 hours a day working all week long, including weekends, they're that most of them, it's very difficult. They become very difficult people to get along with. They're also upset. I mean, they're upset at work. They don't like the competition. And so when they're dealing with spouses and other people, they become very difficult to get along with. They may use their spouse's weaknesses against them. And that's just the sort of person that practicing law can make people. And it's not just necessarily the largest firms. I mean, you have to do that in any firm. But the more you do that, the more difficult it's going to be for you to maintain long-term relationships. And then the attorney practicing law often, it's a solitary profession in a lot of cases. I mean, there are certain attorneys that have practices where they're just dealing with all sorts of different people, and they're not spending their time in front of a computer. But a large portion of the work that attorneys does is sitting in front of a computer looking at whatever they're working on. That, I mean, that's the job, and it's very solitary. And they'll be rewarded for the business and they bring in and how much work they do. And people that were in college and things in law schools, were rewarded for those sorts of things. And so attorneys are typically valued for the things that they do for others. And they certainly need to be able to give work to others and mentor people, but for the most part, they're rewarded for the things that they do individually, not the things outside themselves. I was talking to another attorney at a major law firm on Friday, and she was telling me, this is a huge New York law firm. She was telling me that all the doors of the attorneys were closed, like all the partners' doors were closed, all the associate doors were closed. I mean, this is in a major law firm in New York, and that when she would go to partners, like asking them questions or even senior associates, like people weren't nice about it. They didn't like the interruption, and so she kind of had to figure everything out on herself because if she went to people, they were just putting their bill of hours and things above helping an associate because they didn't get anything out of that. Early in my career, I was talking to a partner in a large law firm, and he came in and he was losing his job. And he said, even though he didn't have business, he was a great mentor to young associates and all this sorts of stuff. And it's just, and I had to tell him, like, that doesn't matter. Like, they're just evaluating you for your business. And so he was interested in helping others in the firm, but that wasn't something that was rewarded. And attorneys are just very focused on themselves. And they often have to be, so they don't, it doesn't necessarily, all law firms don't push orientation towards others. Now, there's some law firms, by the way, that have very good reputations of being collegial. Like one of them is Latham & Watkins. I mean, what a great firm. People work hard there, but at the same time, the culture of the firm is collegiality, and it's very, it's it's a nice place to work for a lot of attorneys. And Simpson Thatcher in New York has that kind of reputation, even though it's a top law firm. It has a reputation of people being collegial, and it just depends on the firm's culture. But for the most part, a lot of law firms, just by the nature of the work, there's not a lot of orientation towards others. The attorney's success often is going to come down to not always in relationships, being very kind of inward focused. Now, that doesn't mean that, of course, that an attorney can't be concerned about, putting the needs of the people they're working for above others, but that kind of orientation, happens. Same thing with, when you see attorneys in the media, they're often portrayed as being very self-centered, and they learn that they have to look out for themselves, and they do so by undermining others, and billing hours, and keeping clients, and all these sorts of things. So, and then the large law firm attorney almost never feels that secure in their job and relaxed unless they have a large book of business. The law firm, even with attorneys with business, will often play games with compensation. They'll favor other people. The politics of the law firm kind of go in and out. I remember there was a law firm I was dealing with, and there was this guy there. It was a LA-based firm, but a good sized firm of over 100 people, and well-respected firm. And I was dealing with this partner there that was doing exceptionally well. He was on he was one of the top attorneys at the firm and management committee and all these things, and really kind of considered like one of the top 4 or 5 most best people in the entire firm. And I wasn't talking to him to move or anything. I was just kind of talking to him on and off over time, like every couple months. And so he kept telling me this over and over again. And then that at one point he came to me and he was just completely undermined and terrified. And what had happened was, I think a bunch of junior partners that had a lot of work were suddenly in power positions, and they were pushing him out and other people. And so now he was looking to take a group of people to another firm, even though he had been like one of the top people at the firm. So this kind of stuff can happen. It can happen as you get older. All sorts of things can happen in the firm. And then, of course, when the attorney gets successful and they get clients, they always have to worry about that work going to another firm. And that's stressful as well. So if they don't continually impress the clients, if they don't get the clients to agree on higher billing rates, so law firms are constantly raising the minimum billing rates that attorneys can charge. That makes it more difficult for them to bring in clients and hold on to clients. So all sorts of things happen. And the large law firm attorney often never feels completely safe, and so they're constantly worried that they can lose business or they'll lose their job. And there's always, in a large law firm, especially associates, if a large law firm announces that they have a job, there are going to be plenty of people that they can replace them with. So if they want to get rid of someone in a large firm in Los Angeles or New York, and the law firm takes a job and they post it on their website or different Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, they're going to get a ton of great applicants. So it's not like any attorney really is indispensable. Attorneys with business are to some extent, indispensable to not as dispensable to a law firm, but there's just always a ton of insecurity. People always see their clients losing, people losing jobs for trivial reasons. I'll just never forget, I had a guy that was a big partner at a law firm, and a very successful partner. And he came to work one day, and there was some sort of casual day there, and he wore jeans, and the jeans were ripped very close to his crotch. It wasn't showing his underwear or anything. And this woman associate complained. The firm was just extremely upset about it and ended up letting him go. I couldn't believe it. And so it can be very, very stressful. And again, when you're around someone that's never secure, they're bringing that insecurity home. They're going to be saying, "Oh, I need to do this and do that. I'm worried about this." And so even spouses of attorneys don't feel secure because the attorney's not making. And then other one that I think is very important is a lot of attorneys will, at the end of the day, the only way that they can kind of turn this off is to drink alcohol or smoke pot or taking pills. And often they get all these prescriptions for all these different types of pills, Xanax, and whatever. And so that this is the only way they can turn it off. Pot and alcohol are two things that they use a lot of. I've seen attorneys that said that they've been smoking pot like every day for since they were 18. I mean, so it's pot is, I guess, somewhat dangerous. It can be dangerous for people. Alcohol is very dangerous because if people start depending on alcohol, it can become very addictive for people. It can make them paranoid. When they're not drinking, it can create all these sorts of problems. And these are something that helps the attorney kind of turn off everything that I've been talking to you about today. And these things can all work for some period of time, but often they stop working and they kind of revert upon themselves. And then one of the last things is the billable hour. This makes marriages, of course, very difficult. I don't think I need to say much about that, but if your value is based on how many hours you work, that's going to create issues as well. Like your value is dependent on these hours. One of the things also that, I mean, this is something I shouldn't talk about, but I'm going to, large law firm attorneys, when they get large clients, will often overbill. And now this is not to say this happens at any particular law firm. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but a ton of attorneys do it. So if you have a client that is capable of paying the firm a couple $1 million a year, and you want to bill them extra hours to get extra hours on your for time you worked, you can often go in and say you worked a certain number of hours where you might not have to pad your hours. So sometimes you'll find that attorneys with the largest books of business will often not be as stressed as other people because their billable hours show up so high when maybe that's not real. And again, I shouldn't talk about this, but I know it happens, and I know it happens at a lot of firms. Certainly not all. Some very highly regarded firms and attorneys it doesn't happen at, and the majority of firms it doesn't happen at, but it happens a lot. So that's something to understand. So in order to bill a lot of hours, people will effectively make up hours. They'll just say they did something they didn't. And this, if people are honest about it and trying to bill a lot of hours, then they can be very difficult because you're always trying to bill hours. And the more time you're billing hours, whether you're away from home or working at home, the less likely you are to have a successful marriage because you're just not around. And and that can be, that's not a good thing. So billable hours can obviously create problems in a relationship. And I don't know that I need to talk too much about this, but obviously that's one of the most biggest things when you're working for large clients where there's very important things happening, where there could be hundreds of millions or not $1 billion even at stake. You are trying to do the best you can on matters to make sure that they work, and so you're just doing whatever you can to make sure that whatever you're doing, you've done the absolute best that you can do, and you will bill a lot of hours and work very hard to do that. And that's especially true with large clients. Large clients have significant matters. They may be doing an IPO, they may be merging, they may be trying to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and the success of the attorneys is contingent upon doing a really good job. And obviously, if you're about a bunch of other people that are like that, then that the attorneys you're billing are the people, the people you're competing with, who's billing the most hours. And then another thing that this is something that affects a lot of attorneys. So if you're a politician running for office, or you're an emergency room doctor, or you're doing some sort of public service, like that's a nice thing. Like you're helping people, and you may be doing something positive for society, or some sort of public servant type job where you're trying to help trying to help society, and those are positive missions, and those are things that that often the spouse will feel like they're part of, and the motivation to uh, change society as a politician, or to heal the sick and injured. These are things that people buy into. I remember I was out not too long ago with a couple of couples and having dinner, and someone asked the wife where her husband was, and he was working Saturday night in an emergency room. She said, well, he's out saving lives, and she was very proud of that. You don't typically hear attorneys spouses talking like that. And the work that large law firms doing are often things that don't necessarily provide a lot of societal value. You may be on the side of a company that's done something wrong, or whatever, and it's not something that people can and spouses can really buy into or even understand. They're just doing something that doesn't necessarily appear to provide a lot of value to society, and so these attorneys are often sacrificing a lot, and there's no shared mission. And and the shared mission is, of course, you can have that about children, relationship, and different things, but the doesn't often happen as much as it should. So there's no inspiration that for the work that an attorney can bring home and that their family can kind of buy into. They can make money, of course, and live in nice neighborhoods and go to good schools and drive nice cars, but that's a different type of shared mission. And so then, the final thing, was, they'll work very hard, and, money, they can bring in a lot of money, but that's not necessarily a substitute for a good relationship. A lot of times, a good proportion of the time, you will see children of the attorney not doing well, having problems when they're young, maybe not going to college, or having anywhere near the level of achievement that the attorney probably had when they were young, and has a lot to do, I think, probably not being around, not being pleasant, not feeling loved, all these sorts of things. And so, if a relationship is just built on money, and that becomes the kind of the overwhelming thing, then is that something that can make both parties happy? And money often becomes the value, instead of maybe a happy marriage or people spending time together. The final one is the longer the attorney's doing this, the more all this stuff is likely to become an issue, and because of that, that's not positive either, obviously. So the attorney will become more of all the things that I've talked about. Substance abuse may get worse, the relationship may get worse, the desire to more hours may get worse, paranoia may get worse. All this stuff gets worse and worse over time. And as that happens, the two sides will often drift farther apart, and then that will be played out in the next relationship. And so I've seen attorneys go through several of these marriages. It seemed to happen like over 5 times, and they occur often because it's just, these are not pleasant people to be married to, and the attorney just doesn't bring home what's needed to have a good relationship, and it can happen over and over again. So again, what I wanted to emphasize also is that this doesn't happen to attorneys in every large law firm. Of course, I mean, there's a great proportion of them, like, good percentage point where it doesn't happen, where they're able to manage all this, where they don't take it, where they're able to succeed in a way without getting fine in all this. There's couples that are very successful and have great relationships despite all this. So it's definitely not something that affects everyone. There are people that have the social skills, the interior sense of their own self-worth, the ability to handle these conflicts that do very, very well. And so this is not something that happens with every attorney, but if you're not, if you don't, if you get too into this stuff, and it can be very, very bad. And so often one of the things that I've seen of people that end up succeeding is attorney that may have been in a situation where one of their parents was a partner in a large law firm, and the partner was able to be kind of have this balance. And then when the attorney gets into practice, being a child of a attorney in a good firm, they will understand what it's about. They will understand how to set limits, and I've seen these kind of relationships work a lot of times. So when I talk to successful attorneys, I mean, I would say 1 in probably 20 is from their parents were attorneys, and sometimes they're trying to even be better attorneys, but they kind of understand the game. And then sometimes marriages can also do well where the non-attorney spouse doesn't work. So an attorney that where their both spouses are working can often be very, very stressful, especially if they're both attorneys. But I've seen if both spouses don't work, that can work as well if one person, the contribution of each parties looks good. I've seen a lot of men now at home. Like I see, I talk to women attorneys, and they'll tell me that their husband is at home raising kids, and that relationship works for a lot of people. But I think it's more difficult when two people are working. So that's just another thing. And then also, both spouses are attorneys. They may understand. They may have an understanding of what the other person is like, and they can identify with each other based on the stress. But it actually works a lot of times. Sometimes attorneys will get married in the same law firm. I've seen that. But it often, if both the people understand each other, they can kind of bond on that. So attorneys marrying attorneys is something that I've seen work a lot. And then also, the spouse is very, very well developed socially. Like they can, and interpersonally, they can understand all this, and they can fuse conflict, and they can support the person. And so that can work, as well. And then, but in most cases, when I've seen this, a lot of times the parent was an attorney, and they'll understand that, and how not to act like maybe their parent did. I don't know, but it seems to work. But a lot of attorneys, of course, will end up concluding that this life isn't for them, and they don't like the person they're becoming, and will often do something else. They'll go in-house or try to practice in another environment. One thing that I've seen is very, very interesting is a lot of people from Yale Law School, I would say the majority of them don't go into law firms. They go into things where they feel like they're having a more of an impact, where it could be politics. There's a lot of presidents become people that went into politics or worked in law schools. They'll go into things different government offices or nonprofits and things because they feel like they're making a contribution. And they kind of, what I talked about earlier, they conclude that they're not making much of a contribution in a firm, like that's kind of a second class kind of job. And that's actually a whole different psychology like there than would exist if you went to like NYU, where the whole psychology is about working in a large law firm and the best one you possibly can. But a lot of people will conclude early in their careers this isn't what they want. That can be a very smart decision for the right people, and not to get all caught up in this. So I will take a quick break just for like 1 or 2 minutes, and then when I come back, this is a live webinar. So I'll answer all the questions that people have, and I'm happy to answer questions about this presentation or any questions that you have about your career. This is my favorite time of the week, answering questions, because I just love the questions people ask, and I think it helps offer a lot more, gives people a lot more insight into things that can help them. So I'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and do questions. And by the way, I mean, everyone, there's a lot of people in this webinar, but I would just tell you that watching stuff like this is extremely helpful for your career. I mean, you can, really reach a lot of conclusions and have a much better career in life by, attending these webinars. So I think I would just commend everyone for being here, because it's very helpful to you, and you can often avoid, you could have a different life, a happier life, or least understand what you're getting into and how to avoid issues. So if you have questions, I know someone just raised their hand. You can just type them into the chat, and then if you're logged into Zoom, I won't show your name, so all the questions are anonymous. So I'll be back in just 1 second. Give me just 1 second, and then I will start with questions. And usually, just just a quick note: questions are usually like very important, because you can ask anything you want, and I will answer it. But getting insight into things that may be affecting you personally, probably going to be asking questions that apply to a lot of people on this webinar. So it's actually almost like a public service you're doing by answering questions, and I will stay as long as it takes to answer them all. So just give me 1 second here. So I'll try to pull the questions. Okay, just 1 second. I followed your content since 2015 and appreciate your candid insights about law firms. After attending a top 5 law school and working in a national firm, not right away, I found the experience would build deep problems. Partners who punish capable associates, hide them from clients under the guise of training, and maintain a business model that seems economically unjustified. Let me just pull this, make this so large. In my observation, talented attorneys can earn more independently over their careers. If you consider the traditional narratives about government influence, firm hopping, and prestige might be backwards, that firms actually seek government corruption and use associate churn strategically and maintain an illusionary prestige to mask a fundamentally flawed model. Okay, so one of the things this is actually a really good point, talented attorneys could earn more independently over their careers. So yes, that's actually true. Many times if you go to a large law firm, you get, you kind of front load your compensation. And so front loading means you're taking compensation that you're making a lot of money, but it's detracting from your ability to make more money over your career. So if you were to start your job at like a mid-sized firm, you went to a top 5 law school, or you started your career in a smaller city, the odds are that you'd still be practicing when you're in your 50s, as opposed to working in a large law firm where you might not be practicing, or you may go in-house to a lower paid job and not have stability there. So often you will earn a lot more in a smaller market or a smaller firm where you have the ability to move up and it's not too hard, as opposed to trying to work in major markets. I mean, the problem in major markets is the type of clients you need to bring often need to be public companies if they're going to work with them. So it's much more difficult to bring in clients. And then, all these narratives about firm hopping and prestige, that's just what they are. If you're moving firms too often, then the law firm that's trying to interview will conclude that you're probably leaving all these firms because you're not doing good work, you're being let go. So that's why firm hopping, even if you're trying to find the best home, you can't move too often. And then, yes, strategic associate churn is used strategically because if you don't feel secure, no one feels secure, then they're going to work harder. So they develop this culture where everybody is acting that way. And then you say it's a fundamentally flawed model. Maybe it is. The model actually started with Cravath. They still do. They represent IBM and other big companies, and they were kind of the first firm after World War II. What happened is there was all this work and companies being started, large companies, expanding all over the United States, and so Cravath was kind of the first firm that developed this up or out thing. So they would have people work very, very hard, and then almost no one would make partner because they couldn't figure out how they were going to continue a partnership. This is what they did, and so they went and started developing this process where they would send their attorneys that weren't going to make partner into their clients, their large clients, and then those large clients would be loyal to Cravath, and then the law firm didn't have to worry about making the partners. So when they started doing that, they would pay very high salaries, like out of law schools, like it was just a complete sea change. When they hired the best people, they would pay these salaries that were just outrageous compared to what other people were making. And then other law firms followed that model and started pushing associates out, and the larger they grew, the more difficult it became for people. So great question. It involves a lot of history and the reason that that's worked. But even if the model's flawed, I don't think it's going away, because That's kind of what law firms are now. This is kind of how the way it works, and I don't see it ever changing. And when people talk about going to certain law firms for work-life balance, the big thing about law firms and work-life balance is if a law firm has the work, they're going to want to do it and make money. So, why would a boutique firm be any different than a large law firm? So if they talk about, work-life balance, it usually isn't there, and people find that. I was talking to a girl on Saturday, and she had a friend that was at from Yale Law School, and this attorney was at a big firm and wanted to go to like a mid-sized firm that didn't pay as much because they felt like they would get work-life balance. So they went to this firm that wasn't as prestigious. It was in New York, that wasn't as prestigious, that didn't pay as much, but sold this attorney on work-life balance. And then they got there and they found out they were working just as hard as they were at this major law firm, making less money and working in a less prestigious firm. So often, you have to find different types of firms that are going to, where that's kind of work. Okay, I started started a big firm, but left to pursue another practice at a boutique firm. 20 years later, many of my friends who stayed at the big firm and busted their tails to make partner got the dreaded visit from the management committee telling them that their practice wasn't profitable anymore and that they needed to find another place to work. It's incredible how little loyalty big firms have now. Yes, so that's true. So you could be at a large law firm, you could bring in business, you could do all these things, and all of a sudden, the management committee will decide that they want you. This actually is very common in two practice areas. One of the practice areas where if you join in a big firm, it can be very risky is employment law. So employment law, there's two types of employment law. There's defending class actions about employment issues, which is relatively a practice area that large law firms, there's not going to be a lot of churn or getting rid of that practice area, but things like employment litigation and employment advisory work, like a lot of law firms had entire practices dedicated to it, but in those practices, they couldn't charge as much money, or they weren't considered prestigious enough. And so the law firm suddenly would just go in and get rid of the practice group. And that's also happened for some firms in patent prosecution, because patent prosecution, a lot of the work is done on a transactional basis, like a fee. So they might charge $100,000 to a patent, and they wouldn't crack the billable hours, and then and then the firm would feel they're not making enough money. It can happen in all sorts of practice areas that people may do at a large law firm. The large law firm decides they don't want their practice here anymore. So that's a very good point. Yes, this happens. It happened to a lot of firms doing employment. It happened in patent prosecution. It can happen in all sorts of practice areas. Sometimes a law firm will even break out and try to do plaintiff's work in big things, and that doesn't work to let the attorneys go. And there's all sorts of practice areas where that can happen. So in general, when you're going into the most profitable practice areas where the clients pay the most, you're going to have more stability than if you go into a practice area with low bill rates. Another one that happens with very frequently is trademark transactional attorneys. So that again is also often charged. You charge for trademark, and or you fight a trademark, and that the money that brings in is something that a lot of law firms are also cutting. So it's just a great question, and thank you. Okay, and that just what you've asked right now provides a lot of value to people. Okay, so your commentary is brutally honest, but I think you give too much credence to this associate partner model. It is never sustainable if your associate will end in disappointment. I disagree with the premise that law firms are merit-based systems. The attorneys who are the rise to the top and are the most committed to leadership's views, a mix of corruption, superstition, and collectivist thinking, take Wachtell Lipton, supposedly the crown of prestige. Yet when Twitter sued them over their bills, their masks slipped and their time entries were revealed as complete nonsense. this isn't an isolated case, but industry-wide, have you found that there's actually no reward for loyalty to these firms, that the merit-based advancement is just another part of the pyramid scheme? Okay, well, Wachtell is an interesting firm. They typically don't even hire laterally from recruiters. I don't know if they ever have. They may have, but I don't think so. They have their own unique culture. It's a very good firm, exceptional. They brought in the most important matters. They often will do flat fee pricing for mergers and things like that, as opposed to billing the hours. I don't know about this thing where Twitter sued them over their bills. But yes, a lot of firms, and I can't make a judgment about Wachtell because I don't know what happened in that case. But yeah, a lot of time entries in firms that they enter may be nonsense, meaning they're making things up. I don't know. I don't know if that happened at Wachtell, but yes, a lot of people will do that. I talked earlier about a lot of the most successful attorneys making up their hours, which happens if you have a big enough client. So, in terms of loyalty and things, yeah, I mean, when you get senior, there often is no loyalty, or if the work slows down, there's often no loyalty. The reason there's no loyalty when you get senior is because the law firm, it's not in their best interest a lot of times for the partners to give you work. So when you get in that position, it's not in their best interest to give you work because your billing rate is close to the partners. Clients would prefer to have the partner do the work as opposed to an associate. And then also, the partners make more money when they do their own work. I talk to people about this every day. But if you go to a law firm, you may get 30% of the revenue that's collected if you do your own work, and maybe it's 10% or 5% if you give work to others. So at that point, the partners in the firm don't have as much incentive to give you work. And so then, even if you've been there 8 or 10 years, that loyalty is just not something that they consider. And so you've wasted 10 years of your life. So merit-based systems certainly exist, but in partnerships, or when people make partner in law firms, they often do it they often become a partner not necessarily based on merit. They often become partner because they have people that will sponsor them. So that means someone that has a lot of value to the firm, typically a partner with a lot of business, will say, I want this person to be a partner. And people will do that. The partnership will vote and make them partner because they don't want to upset the partner with a lot of business. So the partner will be able to advance them. I've talked to people that say things like, I got the partnership, but where I was going to consider it, I didn't have strong enough sponsors, and therefore I didn't make partner. And this guy I'm thinking of left and started his own firm with just him. He started a solo practice after 10 years at a big firm. So you can get a lot more mileage in your career in big firms if you get close to partners that have a lot of power in the firm and are well thought of, generally because they have a lot of business or doing other stuff well. Let me see. So someone asked for a copy of the presentation. So sure, I will email everyone on the presentation. PowerPoint. I will do that after this meeting. So thanks. Okay, so the next question is, which is a good question. It's a wrong question. I understand the long hours, high expectations come with the territory, but is there a specific way to communicate limits that won't be perceived as a lack of commitment? Yeah, so I remember when I was young, and then a partner that I know that eventually became pretty successful and did well for a time. He said that no one's ever going to tell you to stop working. Like you could be working 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, and no one's going to ever tell you stop working because it's not in their best interest to do so. So why would a partner want you not to bill a lot of hours to make more money for him or the party from he or her in the partnership? Like they might, but they don't have a lot of incentive to do so. So the only way that you can set limits is to just set your own limits, meaning you decide you want to go swimming every day at 8, or something along those lines. I knew someone that did that, or you do things, you schedule in time for your family, and you can do that, and and usually you can get away with it. If you if you're doing really well at the firm. So the only limits you can set or set them, you have to set them independently on your own, and no one will, and that's it. I remember I was talking to a woman that had been in a small partnership in a law firm. It wasn't a big law firm. It was maybe 20 people, and there was a partner there, and they had broken off from a very large firm. And when he did that, he said, I'm never working Saturdays. It's just not, I won't do it. And they were in a very large case, and they had all these motions and responses and everything due on a Monday. And the guy did the same thing, and no one could believe it, but that was just who he was. There's other attorneys I know that will always not work on Shabbat. So they won't work from Friday evening till Friday night or Saturday night. And they can get away with it sometimes, or some of the time. So it just depends on, yourself and if you're able to do it, and if people respect your reasons for doing it, which doesn't happen everywhere, but it certainly does. Okay, I think that excessive concern with what law firm leadership believes is a path to destruction. Your webinar implicitly acknowledges this. I've secured my own clients with ease. I worked at several law firms, and one constant was paranoid fear over exposing low-level associates. They're afraid of competition. Why surrender one's health and happiness and measure yourself by irrational expectations of law firm leadership who demand self-sacrifice for false promises, bad economics? I wanted to work at another large law firm. Why is this a better option than establishing my own business reputation rather than putting it in the hands of someone else? Yeah, so a lot of attorneys will start their own law firms. It can be actually a very good move. Attorneys that have done that often much prefer it, and they do much better economically and in other ways. I was talking to an attorney a couple of weeks ago, and he had started his own practice, and he was billing out at like $800 an hour or something. He was working 1,000 hours a year and bringing home, probably after his expenses of offices and stuff, bringing home like $700,000 a year. And he was faced with the thing of going to merge his practice in another law firm, which he was thinking about doing. But all the law firms he was talking to were offering him 50% of what he brought in. So he would, instead of going from making 700,000, he was going to go into making 400,000. So it didn't make sense for him to work in a firm. And so a lot of times people will start their own law firms exactly for these sort of reasons, because they want more control over their careers. And yes, your reputation, the amount of business you bring often, and other things are in control of someone else when you're trying to work in a law firm. Everything is in control of other people. You're working for other people. So no matter how far along you get in your career in a law firm, essentially you're always working for other people and groups of other people whose approval you're always dependent upon. And so we talked earlier about practice areas being folded out, all sorts of things that can happen to you, when you're in a firm independent on someone else. You can be let go for not enough billable hours. You can be let go for some stupid mistake. You can be let go for wearing the wrong jeans to work, or falling out of a taxi by mistake, even if you weren't drunk. I mean, all these things can happen when you're putting your hands in the hands of someone else. Now, I will just say personally, I concluded when I was very young that I didn't like the position of working in a law firm, because I felt like it was too risky, and I felt like if I did things on my own, I would have a better career in life than to be dependent on others. I would see people not make partner because someone else had 300 hours more billable time than they did. I mean, just all sorts of things. People get fired for stupid mistakes. So yeah, you're dependent on someone else anytime you're working for them. And that's one reason why people do their own things. It can be very, very smart to do that. If you have enough self-confidence and faith in yourself. Do law firms recognize the impact of work-related stress on personal relationship, or is it an unspoken issue? In your experience, have any firms actively implemented policies or support systems to help attorneys manage their personal lives alongside their careers? Yes. So they have a lot of firms that are kind of more democratic than Republican, which is a huge number of firms, do support those sorts of things, or at least, try to. But, ultimately, the attorney's still going to be responsible for billing hours. If you have personal lives, issues in personal life inside your career, that's often not going to be something that, is, that you want to expose to law firms and managing that. I knew a woman that was doing very, very well at a law firm, and she became friends with a partner she worked with, and the partner would talk to her about her personal life, men, people she met on dating sites, and all sorts of things. And then, so the attorney became very comfortable with her as a woman attorney. And then she told this partner about this fling that she had one weekend where, I don't know, some guy she met on a Club Med trip when she got out of law school, flew out to meet her, and they had sex all weekend. And the partner did not like that. And from the moment she said that, she just started pushing her out because she's brought up personal information. Even the partner who's doing the same thing with her didn't like it. So in terms of managing your personal life alongside your career, it can be very difficult in large law firms, and people can be problematic. All right. And thanks again for all these questions. These are great. Okay, what specific qualities make some attorneys more resilient to the relationship pressures of big law than others? I know that certain personality types thrive in high pressure environments while they struggle, but is there a way to develop the mindset, coping mechanism necessary to sustain both a legal career and a marriage? Yeah. So, you just have to learn how not to take that home with you. Other people, can find people that will tolerate it. So I don't know, different spouses will have different social skills or psychological skills. I think that people, when you say personality types, I think people that are motivated by what others think of them and competition, are the ones that do the best. There's, if you were a law firm, you would want to, have people like that around you and represent your clients, meaning very highly motivated and liking the pressure. And one thing I would say too, and this is actually a really important point, is, you spend the majority of your time from when you get up to when you go to bed at night, you spend the majority of it work. So if you don't like work, like what's the point? So you actually have to like what you're doing to be happy. So if you don't like what you're doing and struggle, then you're not going to be happy. I see that with litigators all the time. Like it doesn't make them happy. Like, the fighting and stuff doesn't make them happy. So you actually have to enjoy whatever it is you're doing. And if you don't enjoy it, then you should be doing something else. There's no reason to be in a job that you don't enjoy. So you have to really like what you're doing. If you like what you're doing, attorneys that like what they're doing. I see like people, like I've been talking this week, for some reason, I talked to two really interesting data privacy attorneys, and they've taken all these courses in data privacy. They've written all these papers and given all these presentations. I'm talking about like a third-year attorney, and second page of their resume was like all publications and talks and papers and all these things that the person had done independent of the law firm. They just absolutely loved data privacy. And then I spoke to another one this morning that is making over $1 million a year at a small law firm that loves data privacy. And so you have to really enjoy what you're doing, and it has to be something that makes you happy and motivates you. And if it doesn't, then you're kind of in trouble. So you need to always make sure that you like what you're doing. If you don't like what you're doing in a high pressure environment and struggle, then you should put yourself into a position where you're enjoying yourself. One other point I would make too is I see people that come out of not good law schools, bottom of their class or whatever, and they go into other practice areas where they're happier and they do incredibly well. Might be personal injury or something, and they actually make more money than an attorney at a top law firm would, but they enjoy what they're doing. So you have to be in a practice area in a type of environment where you really, really enjoy what you're doing. And if you don't, you're not going to do well, because you're going to be competing against people that enjoy what they're doing. Enjoy what you're doing, you're going to work harder. It's going to become more natural to you. It's going to lead to more opportunity. You're going to be a better advocate for clients because you're so interested in what you're doing. You're going to be able to translate that enthusiasm into the work. There's just all sorts of things, and you do not need to continue practicing law to do well in your career. There's countless stories of people that have failed the bar multiple times and became incredibly successful doing other things, or went to huge law firms and stopped working there and did things like start makeup companies and start. I mean, there's all sorts of things that an attorney can do, and if you learn how to cope in a high pressure environment, that will often lead to a lot more success in whatever career you take it, you go to, because the people you're competing with won't have anywhere near your level of drive and ability to kind of see around corners and anticipate problems and all the things that you would learn. I do like, by the way, large law firms for people for 5 years, so you don't have to stay there forever. But the advantage of being at a large law firm for 5 years is you will really be trained like very, very well in whatever practice area you're in, because you'll be doing a lot of work and you'll be doing, the clients are willing to pay for a lot of work. So you'll be able to see, drill down into the minutia of a case or a transaction. And after 5 years, you can take that, way of thinking about things or whatever, and you can start your own firm and you can do something else. So, yeah, but if you enjoy what you're doing and you're happy, then you're going to be happier when you get home. And so that's, very good, very important point. Attorneys that know what they're doing are happy, by the way, are generally, they really love their practice area. Like I see people all the time where they may have a resume that just kind of lists their employer and a couple lines about it, their experience. And then I see other attorneys that have the same amount of experience at the same firm that will put together these like long transaction sheets of all the matters they worked on. They're very proud of it. And then they will, litigators will do the same thing, and they will just be really, really enthusiastic, and it comes through on their resume, and others that don't. And so the people that enjoy it are typically the happiest, and that can help, with marriages and all that sort of thing. See here. If working in a big law firm forges an attorney's personality, do you recommend against hiring a big law firm refugee in a small law firm? No, I think that, if you have a small law firm, typically, small law firms won't pay anywhere near as much, but they will offer different advantages. Like there may not be enough work to keep the person completely busy and having to work crazy hours. So attorneys from big law firms that want to work in smaller law firms are often exceptional to hire, because they can provide a much better level of client experience and work for clients than someone from a small law firm. So they would just be better advocates and better trained, and all these personality types. It might make it difficult for them to integrate with other associates maybe there, but at the same time, they probably would push everyone to improve the quality of their work and to do a better job. So big law firm refugees often are really good hires for small law firms. The only thing to be careful of when a big law firm refugee goes to a smaller law firm is, are they working there because that's what they want, or are they working there because for whatever reason they can't get a better job? And when they're in a position to get a better job, then then they'll leave. So what does that mean? So during economic contractions or different periods of time, there will not be enough jobs in large law firms. So those people will take jobs in smaller law firms and then leave when things get better, or they'll take a job at a small law firm and then just constantly be looking for another employer. And so that's not good for the esteem of the other attorneys they're working with, and can also often be a disruptive hire. Let's see here. Question. And thank you everyone for all these questions. These are just great questions, and feel free to ask as many questions as you have. Okay, how attorneys who are already divorced, I'm sorry, how can attorneys who are already divorced due to big law pressures rebuild their careers without carrying the stigma of personal failure? It seems like firms and recruiters emphasize stability and commitment, so I worry that a divorce could be viewed as a sign that I couldn't handle the demands of the job. Are there ways to frame this in interviews or discussions with a potential employer so it doesn't count against me? Okay, so stability and commitment is important. That this is something that law firms emphasize. The only reason for they emphasize stability is because if you have stability, then it's a sign that you can handle the political pressures, the billable hour, second, the billable hour pressures, the all these pressures that a law firm has. So there are people that can go into an employer and stay there a long time because they're able to navigate all the politics. It just becomes natural to them. They usually don't get involved on one side or the other in political issues. They are associated with people that like their jobs and firm and not the people that don't. And so those are just, and certain people can navigate that better than others. So if you have stability, the reason large law firms like that is because it shows you're probably pretty good politically, you were probably doing pretty good work or you wouldn't have left, and in that you commit wherever you go. And so commitment is important because if you don't commit, then the law firm has to go and hire someone new. And so just imagine, in this example, if you're billing $1,000 an hour and working 50 hours a week, so that's that's going to be, what is that, 50,000 a week that you're bringing in. I mean, that's quite a bit of money. And then not only that, but you understand the client, et cetera. So if you leave, then all of a sudden, it might take the law firm, I don't know what the time period is, but 2 months to find someone new. Right? So just telling you how the firms do the economics. And then during that time, they will have lost 400,000, or let's say 3 months, let's say 3 months. 3 months to find someone new. So they're losing $200,000 a month. So they're going to lose $600,000 they're going to lose. So if someone leaves, so they don't like that. So obviously that's bad. But also when people leave, it sends a message that there's something wrong with the firm if you're not leaving for other reasons, to other associates, firms. So other people start thinking about leaving. I mean, not always, and especially a large law firm, think about leaving. And then, and then if you have issues with clients not liking the stability, if you have, if you have contact with them, that's one reason, like a lot of times law firms will not give associates at certain levels contact with clients because they don't want the clients to know about that. The client's not happy because, I don't know, it's, someone different, comes in, whatever. So this is a reason, one of the reasons that law firms don't like people leaving. They just lose a lot of money, create issues. And then not only that, I mean, they need to replace the person. But when law firms see people leaving a lot, like if you go to one job and you're another job and you're another job, a couple of 3 jobs in 3 years, then you're just a bad risk. I mean, who would you hire? Would you hire someone that had been at their last law firm for 3 years or 4 years, or would you hire someone that had been at 2 or 3 law firms? So this is just how it kind of counts against you. But you're talking about divorce, a sign that you can't handle the job. You don't need to talk about divorces in interviews. So I don't know, that you would have to bring this up. I don't think most partners in most law firms have been divorced. I mean, not most, I mean, say the majority. I'm not going to quote percentages because I don't know what they are. But, if you frame that in a way that it doesn't count against you, then I would say that if anything, that's one thing that a lot of attorneys can identify with other attorneys. It may not even be a sign of weakness. I don't think it's something that you need to worry about, but I certainly wouldn't bring it up in interviews. I don't think it's something to talk about in interviews. I don't think people would ask you about being divorced, but if they did, you certainly wouldn't lie about it. Okay, I've seen colleagues sabotage their careers by becoming too focused on their own status, compensation, or need for recognition, and I want to avoid these mistakes. What are the warning signs that an attorney is becoming too egocentric in their career decisions? Well, I think, once you start putting your needs above those of others in your life that are important, like your spouse and that sort of thing, then then that becomes, meaning, I guess that would be egocentric, and I don't know, how you would handle that. It's not a mistake if you're trying to be, trying to advance in a large law firm to be that concerned about your, you have to be concerned about your status. The compensation is something that people use to measure themselves against others, and this need for recognition is also something. So, how do you avoid the same mistakes? And what are the warning signs that you're becoming too egocentric? So, yeah, so status is something that I brought up earlier, where attorneys will always compare themselves to other attorneys, and that's just how it works. I don't like the being focused on compensation a lot. I think that when you're in the first 5 years of your career, a lot of attorneys will move because they didn't get a big enough bonus, or they will just be very upset about different compensation decisions in the law firm. And I really think that what's so awesome about the legal profession is it takes about 5 years to learn most practice areas and get really good at it. Now, there are certain exceptions to that, immigration and a lot of consumer facing practice areas where you may not need that much experience, but in most big firm practice areas, it takes about 5 years to learn it. And so it's not, you shouldn't be too focused on compensation, I don't think. Early in your career, I think a lot of people move for that reason. But essentially what's happening in your first 5 years is you're getting paid to learn a practice area, which is great. I mean, you don't come out of law school knowing how to be a corporate M&A attorney. You only learn it by getting experience. And so I think compensation is not necessarily something that a lot of people should be concerned about. And you're right, people do sabotage their careers by that. People do sabotage their careers by often working in large law firms because they become so they start disliking practicing law so much that they end up leaving the practice of law, or they go in-house instead of in a law firm. One of the things that, when you talk about sabotaging your careers, I think is extremely important is, when you work in a law firm, and you start getting clients, like, you actually own your own business. Like, the law firm is only there to provide you associates and office space and a brand and administrative support and all this stuff. So, and you actually, when you have your business, you're going to a law firm that fulfills your needs of servicing your clients and paying you. That's it. So the law firm becomes, you still are managed by people there and so forth, and you have to, there's management committees and things you're working for, but you essentially have your own business, and you can take that business to other firms, which is really awesome. So staying in a law firm instead of just leaving to go in-house or something, if you get your own clients, I mean, you can practice into your 70s. I mean, the current president is like 78. I mean, and you can still have a good career in a law firm. I remember, like, I don't know, it was a while ago, but we placed a guy that was 82 and had his own, like, a good sized book of business of like 2.5 million or 3 million or something. So you can practice till you die if you have clients. I mean, that's just how it works. If I had another guy, it was interesting. It was years ago. He was in Orange County, and he had his own law firm doing advanced trust in the States. And he wanted me to help merge his law firm into another law firm. And I was like meeting with this guy, and he was like drooling. He was almost dead. But he still had this law firm that was bringing in, $2 or $3 million a year, and he was taking home $1 million. And you can do this literally for the rest of your career, which is just freaking amazing. Like, you can practice forever if you're in a law firm. Whereas if you were in house or in other practice settings of government, you have a limited runway. You're going to have to retire at some point. But when you're an attorney in a law firm, that doesn't happen. Like I told you earlier, which is kind of interesting to me, there's all these people, I would say at least 100 per day that are coming into BCG, and they are from the government. So all these people that thought they were in very stable, in the federal government, but were in very stable positions going to work for the government. They went to top law schools, Yale, Stanford, all this sort of stuff. They're from there. And they've all gone into government. And now, because of the new administration, they're just losing jobs. They're remote. They're being called back to Washington, D.C. They're with their families and things working remotely. And so all of a sudden, all these people are losing their jobs, and it's going to be very difficult for them to find new jobs. I mean, an attorney working for USAID, what are they supposed to do? Like, it's very sad. So if you go to a law firm, you like what you're doing, it could be a small or large law firm, and you build clients, you have a business, you can operate the rest of your life and make a ton of money. I was speaking to another woman in Washington, D.C. last week, and same thing. Like, she's like in her late 70s and has a law firm that's bringing in enough money to pay her like over $1 million a year. And but she's in her late 70s, and no one could do something anywhere near that if they weren't, if they didn't have a business. And so your legal career can go on indefinitely, a business, which is really nice. And you don't have to worry about this other stuff. Okay, so if I have a history of substance abuse, but have since recovered, will this negatively impact my job search in BigLaw? Should I disclose this history? I've asked about gaps in my resume, or would this put me at a disadvantage? Additionally, if I suspect my recovery journey might be difficult in the high stress firm, should I consider an alternative legal path instead? Great question. Thank you for asking this, because this is kind of a personal question, and I can actually give you a lot of answers for it to help you. So first thing, I mean, that's awesome. You were able to get over your substance abuse problem. A lot of people don't. I mean, that's why we have this huge fentanyl crisis in the country, and these tariffs and all this stuff going on, because people started taking OxyContin when that was popular. They got addicted to it. And then when that was pulled and you could get subscriptions, they started using heroin. Now heroin's got fentanyl in it. So there's this huge crisis. So a lot of people don't recover. I mean, think about this fentanyl problem, right? Millions of people that have it. So getting over a substance abuse problem, I mean, you're talking about OxyContin, maybe stopped subscribing it like 10 years ago, and people still have problems. And drinking can be extremely difficult to overcome, because your whole biochemistry changes, and it takes about 2 years for your cells to all change in your body. So, I mean, it's overcoming substance abuse is very, very difficult. But will this negatively impact your job search in BigLaw? So I had a case not too long ago. There was a partner that was in charge of a corporate department like M&A or something at a large law firm in Chicago. He was asked to go out to a pitch, just help some client pitch help some other attorney pitch a client in like Tulsa, Oklahoma or something. And he got on the plane. He had a substance abuse problem. He ordered like 3 drinks before this plane landed at like 9 a.m. He walked into a meeting. He was drunk, and not only that, but he was undermining the attorney trying to bring in the business, because he had some kind of conflict with him, and he got fired and lost his job. When he lost his job, he also lost all his business. Think about that. I mean, some guy in his 40s that this happened to. I started working with him, and he had all these issues, and I actually brought it up to firms. So like, this is what happened to this guy, and he was able to get a job in a mid-sized firm by disclosing that. But why would they hire him? They knew about that. They hired him because he had generated so much business in the past, and he was sober. That the implication was that he would help the firm grow their practice, and it's exactly what happened. So he ended up doing very, very well. But if you're not in a position where you have that much power, where you can say, I can bring in all this work for you, and you're an associate or something, no, you should never disclose this history. If asked about gaps in your resume, you absolutely do not want to give people anything to use against you. This part of the business, the calculation of hiring him, meaning you could bring in millions of dollars to a small to mid-sized firm, they calculated that it would be in their best interest to do that. But if an associate's applying for jobs and they have this history, the firms are obviously going to hire someone without that history. They'll prefer them because there's less risk. I mean, you would do the same thing if you were hiring, nanny to take care of your children. Nanny came in and said she had these horrible drug problems or whatever, and another nanny, but she's okay now. And another nanny came in and didn't have those issues. You would probably prefer the nanny without the issues. This is what most people would do. I don't know if you would do that, but that would be how people would think. So that's how people think about employees. Now, this is another good question. If I suspect my recovery journey might be difficult in a high stress firm, should I consider alternative legal paths instead? So I had a candidate early in my career. She went to Harvard Law School. She did so well there that when she left, they asked her to teach this class as a, I don't know what it would be, a adjunct professor, whatever it was, but they asked her to stay on and teach a class because she had written papers or whatever she had done. Now, prior to going to law school, she had been a model, and when she was a model, I guess a lot of these models they use crystal meth and all these sort of uppers and things. At least they did at the time, and so she had to overcome all that, and did. I mean, it took her a while, but she overcame it, and then became an advocate for women getting off of drugs. And I think that was on her resume where when she got into Harvard Law School. But the thing is that she went to probably one of the most high stress firms you can imagine in Los Angeles, and it just sent her over the edge. So within 6 months, she was doing crystal meth again, and then having all these horrible problems at the firm, and lost her job and spent the next 2 or 3 years bouncing in and out of recovery. She had children, so she would be going to rehab places in Utah and all sorts of stuff for 3 months at a time, and just coming back and then getting back on, so it just sent her over the edge. So if I had a serious substance abuse problem, I would just say that, your sobriety, because if you're not, it destroy your life. That's just what happens. People's lives get destroyed for substance abuse problems. Why would you put yourself in a situation, where you were doing that again? I was in a fraternity in college. It was considered like a party attorney. It was a same attorney same law for a fraternity. It was an Animal House, and it 12 chapters around the country. I mean, the people were just insane. I remember people from Yale College and things coming, and in my fraternity house there were about I don't know, 15 people maybe living there, and then everyone else was off campus, maybe 15, maybe 20, and a lot of them had serious substance abuse problems, and they carried over. They just didn't stop. When they got out of college, and by the time 3 of them were in their 30s, they ended up killing themselves, and one of them got cancer and died, probably from, I don't know, but this is all before they were 40. So substance abuse can be very, very serious for some people because it can make you depressed and all these things. So why would you not prioritize your recovery over working in a big firm? I think that would be crazy. So that's just my opinion, but I do think that if you don't prioritize recovery from that sort of stuff, you can get in a lot of serious trouble. And I don't know why anybody would ever that had some serious substance abuse problem would prioritize putting themselves in a stressful environment rather than recovery. Okay, so do you find in general that attorneys with successful relationships have achieved it because they compromise their career as success and personal relationships compromise through their career? Yes, I think that probably at least 50% of attorneys that advance, attorneys with successful relationships have achieved it because they compromise their career. Yes, I think that's true. Not always, but a good portion of the time. I mean, I talk to very successful attorneys all day, and I would say that when I talk to partners, I would say half of them are in good situations with their spouses. I mean, it's just that's, they've managed to do it. So it's not something that happens to everybody, but it happens to a lot of people. And yes, I think that, if you put yourself in a lower stress environment, you're likely to have a much better relationship. That means going into government or maybe in-house jobs and things, but you're not going to have the same level of success that you might have in a large law firm, for example, at least financially. But what is, the money can make you be able to retire and then have successful relationships. I know a partner in a large law firm that's a good friend of mine, and he retired when he was in his late 40s. And since that time, for the past 10 years, he's been a stay-at-home dad, raising his kids and trying to have a really good, have a relationship with his wife. And so yes, relationships are more successful, in attorneys and, small firms usually. I mean, this to answer your question. Yes, I think attorneys in small firms are generally much more successful than those in large firms. I also think that attorneys in small markets are generally much more successful in the relationships than a large firm. So when you're in a small market, many times you will your kids may all be going to the same elementary school. You'll be living in similar neighborhoods. You will go to the sports games with other attorneys and their spouses and things. And I think from what I've seen, I've known lots of attorneys in small markets that they tend to have much more longer term relationships. That's actually prioritized. That's they go to the same churches and things, and so that becomes a priority in small markets and in some small firms. The larger the market, the more competitive it's going to be for work. The smaller the market, the fewer firms, the fewer clients that they are going to be, and often the more stable the client relationship. So I think that attorneys in small markets and small law firms practice for much longer. I had something happen where I've told the story before, but I was clerking in the city called Bay City, Michigan, which is I don't know, about an hour and a half north of Detroit. And there were maybe 4 or 5 law firms there, and that were maybe more than 15 people. And there was a young lawyers group, and I only went to a couple of the meetings. But obviously, as a clerk, I was a young lawyer, and I met other people, anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6 years of practice. After 20 plus years of not having clerked, I looked them all up, or the ones I remembered, because I was just kind of curious what was going on with them. And I think almost all of them I found at the same firms they had been associates at. Like when I met them, they were all at the exact same firms and partners there and so forth. And I found that very interesting because it kind of showed me that in smaller markets, there's a lot of stability. Because if I were to take 10 lawyers that I met in New York City or Los Angeles or the Bay Area or something that had joined small firms or large firms, the odds of them being there, 20 years later would be almost zero. So just very interesting, the kind of career you can have in a smaller market as opposed to a larger market. Okay, let me see. These are great questions, by the way. Thank you, everyone who's asking them. Do you find attorneys in certain specialties have more successful or unsuccessful personal relationships than those of other specialties? Yes. So, some of the personal injury, any trust estates. What else? Just give me some examples. Consumer-facing practice areas, and so consumer-facing practice area. This is a great question. So I'm going to actually give it a little bit more time than I normally would. So I'm just going to share another screen here. Search. So yeah, so you have all these different practice areas that people do, that attorneys can do, and so your question would be like, what type of practice area would make would there be where people tend to have better personal relationships? Art and bankruptcy, museum law, which no one's probably thinking about. To some extent, construction law. That's typically not done by the largest firms, and so the work isn't as stressful. Criminal law, sort of, let's see what else you got here. Data privacy, probably less so. Education, that's a good one. So people tend to have good relationships in that. This is not, for the most part, that stressful practice area, and large firms don't do it. Entertainment, yes, people can have very successful relationships doing that. That tends not to be that stressful. I mean, there's certain things like litigation and things that can be, but that would be good personal relationships. ERISA, that's one where people can tend to have good personal relationships. A lot of the times, it's not, there's not pressure to bill huge hours and things doing it, so that's another one. Family law, less so, because that's confrontational. So if someone does adoption law or something like that, but just general divorce law and things can be extremely stressful. Let's see here, government, that a good one, less stressful. Government contracts, most of these government type of jobs, large law firms do them, but those can be less stressful. Healthcare, less. Immigration, yes, people tend to have very good relationships there. That's a great practice area for relationships because it's just that there's not as much pressure. It's just kind of different. Insurance plaintiffs work you can have better personal relationships often, and a lot of forms of even insurance defense is not as stressful because you're doing defending auto accidents sometimes and things like that. So that can be a good practice area. IP patent can be good for relationships. Anything to do with litigation is very stressful. Trademark, any form of patent law is usually people tend to have. It's less. I mean, it's very stressful, but it's less stressful. Labor employment plaintiff work, labor and employment compliance and counseling is another one. Most forms of litigation are going to be very stressful, and that's just kind of how that works. Appellate litigation is not stressful, so a lot of times, people will come from Supreme Court clerkships and things to do appellate work, and that can be not as stressful. E-discovery, not as stressful. Most forms of litigation are going to be pretty stressful unless you're doing like a lot of plaintiffs work sometimes. That can be less stressful. Trust and estates litigation is not that stressful. I don't want to spend too much time on the rest of these, but trust and estates is another one where people tend to have better relationships. And then also tax. Most forms of tax law are not stressful. So, your job as an attorney, it's a lot of times you're very smart going into certain practice areas because you're much more likely to have employment stability, and be happier in the long run than if you went into a practice area, that's stressful. So anytime you're doing consumer facing work, meaning working for individuals as opposed to big companies, it becomes less stressful. And the larger the company you're representing, the more stressful it's going to be because the company can hire plenty of attorneys to do the work, and you also need to do the work, very, very, you need to work very, very hard because these are matters that can involve hundreds of millions of dollars. Whereas if you're doing, trust and estates, like that's just not going to stress you out very much. So, but if you work in consumer facing practice areas, most of the time, you can't do it in a large law firm. Sometimes you can do tax, you can do employment counseling and things, but most of the time you can't. Most transactional practice areas are very stressful. I mean, real estate's probably less stressful than a lot of corporate related work, but at the same time, there's tons of real estate attorneys that work very, very long hours in large law firms, so that can be stressful as well. Okay. How should I handle a situation where a partner, senior attorney at a firm pressures me to drink or participate in social related counseling? So most people that have alcohol problems will want to have other people around them drinking. That's just how it works. And in some firms and markets, a lot of people drink or even use drugs. I know one firm in the Bay Area is very highly regarded, and the partners and associates, would do cocaine together. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. And so you go off if you're pressured to do substance related socializing, then I don't really think that's much of a problem, at least for me. I don't drink, and no one ever says anything. They used to, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, but I don't think there's a lot of pressure for people to use stuff anymore. And if that's a situation you find yourself in and that's a problem for you, then, you need to either avoid that or just not participate. I mean, it shouldn't bother you that people around you are drinking or using drugs and you're not. It's just, you're actually showing a lot of control. And I think that ultimately people prefer having people do work for them and working for them that don't use substances. I mean, that's just that's what you would want if you were an employer. But think about it. Would you want to hire someone that went out to drink or use drugs a lot, or would you want to hire someone that didn't? And I guess if that's what you did, and you wanted people around you like that, then you would hire people that had substance abuse problems. But for the most part, I don't think that that's something that that hurts you. I think it's actually a good thing. I don't really think, unless substances are a real problem for you and you're coming off them or something, and you don't want to be around that temptation, I don't think there's anything wrong with socializing with people that are using a lot of substances. At least, I mean, it's not for me. I mean, literally, oops, problem in my word. Apologize for that. For some reason, my computer restarted, but I'm back, so I apologize. Think about a second. By the way, I want to, just commend everyone. This particular webinar, I was worried that people wouldn't find it that interesting. So because it applied to people getting divorced, but there's certainly been a lot of interest. I mean, a lot of people here asking questions today. So I'm going to go back to Q&A. Enter dismiss. For some reason, because I had to log in, it took out the questions that people were asking. So if anyone has any additional questions, if you could ask them now real quick, and I'll answer them. There were at least a few additional questions. So if anyone has any questions, I will answer them right now. Let's wait a minute or two. All right. Well, it sounds like no one has any additional questions. I had a bunch to answer. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Someone just asked a question again. And again, I'm really sorry about this. My computer, I bought a new computer that's like very powerful compared to my old one. And for some reason, it keeps turning on and off, which is kind of, thank you for keeping to type these questions. Let me see here. I know anybody whose questions I didn't answer, yeah, just put them to the chat and I will answer them. I apologize, just stupid. Okay. So the next question is, associates should not be treated as disposable trash by law firms. They're almost all like the customers. The law firm is essentially advertising its support system of attorneys with the expectation that the attorney will become a profitable business, of which the law firm as a collective leadership can take a share. Law firms instead seem to believe that associates must cater to the irrational and subject whims of leadership. This is why any smart and independent attorney can outcompete and make $700,000 a year, as you described, versus making half with a firm. Attorneys like to go in-house because it resembles a law firm model. They are afraid to go out on their own and want to be dependent, and the trade-off is to leave your future into the hands of possibly the wrong people with the promise of security. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, think about all the government attorneys right now in the federal government that are losing their jobs. I mean, they're dependent basically on the will of Trump and Elon Musk. And so that's not, people would think that's security, but it's not. If you go in-house for security, those are some of the least secure jobs, because what'll happen is the company could go out of business. You're a cost center in-house. So as a cost center, what that means is they're paying you a salary and you're not necessarily giving you corresponding revenue like salesmen or something, or saleswoman may do. In-house jobs, different in-house counsel can come in as like the general counsel. They want to bring in their own legal department, get rid of people there. Same thing with the CEO come in, want to bring in their own legal department. So in-house jobs are extremely scary. When I look at the resumes of in-house jobs or in-house attorneys, and this isn't all of them, but a great number of them will go in-house and then from some big law firm, and then they'll work there for a year or two, and there'll be like an employment gap on their resume. And the same thing will happen again. I saw one guy who was very scary. He moved to Durango, Colorado from working at a major firm in New York. And he got to this company in Durango, Colorado. He bought a house and he thought he was safe. So he'd been there like 6 months and bought a house, and his kids were going to school, and he lost his job. And, it had taken him like a couple of years to find a good in-house job. And suddenly that one. So, that's scary. So as long as you're every time you're dependent on others for something, you're at great risk in your career, and that's not good. I mean, it's very scary. So any type of job you go into, unless you have like your own book of business or something, then, that's, your risk. This other thing too, you say irrational and subject whims of the leadership. So when you go into a law firm and you're dealing as an associate with leadership and they seem very irrational and, subjective, that's right. But so are the clients they're dealing with. So if you're a partner in a law firm and you're dealing with clients, this is another thing, is you're dealing with irrational and subjective clients sometimes. And so the partners will carry over that psychology of people dealing with them like that to the associates. But then if you learn those skills as an associate, then the idea is that you could actually take the skills of dealing with those irrational and subject whims and so forth, and be very, very, good of understanding kind of how clients work. So yes, so that's kind of how it works. Yes, when you go to a law firm, you're dependent on them paying you what, even as a partner, paying you what they want. So what happens in law firms is kind of funny, but I learned this very early. And it's not funny, but I learned very early in my career. There was a big crash that happened in like 2000, late 2000, when all this corporate work that law firms have been hired to do for these internet companies that had huge amounts of private equity and stuff coming in and giving them money for legal work, all that work just stopped. It basically, when around November of 2000, the market as a whole realized that probably 95% of these internet companies had no revenue model and weren't going to make money, and so all the legal work was pulled. And so all these associates and things lost their job, but partners that remained at the firms who had been corporate partners bringing in a lot of work, what happened is most of the big firms continued compensating them for what they had in the past because they made a lot of money for the firm. And IP litigation and other forms of litigation became the profit centers of the firm. So what happened to the litigators who were suddenly getting a lot of work is they had all their compensation cut of what they should be making, so they could balance out everyone else's compensation. So the corporate attorneys without any work were continuing to get compensated kind of similar to what they made when they had a lot of work. And then the litigators were subsidizing the corporate attorneys. And so all of a sudden you had all these people that were litigators jumping from other firms and they were partners because they weren't being compensated what they thought. So this whole kind of thing happened. A firm called Brobeck went out of business for similar reasons. That was at one time like the hottest firm. I think it might have been like advertising the Super Bowl or something. But anyway, so yeah, so law firms, people do go in-house. The only way you're ever going to get security is if you start your own law firm and you have clients, or you get a lot of business in a law firm. People get security all the time by leaving large law firms and starting their own firms. I know at least a couple of attorneys that were at large law firms and left because they didn't have any security, and they ended up going into like personal injury and things like that, and now are very, very happy and have great careers. Another one that did it with family law. A lot of them do it with family law, and you can that can provide you security if you can deal with all the emotion and stuff that happens kind of in that practice area, which is very, very difficult, but you can make a lot of money and have security by let me just say, so this person that just asked this question says, let me just see here. Sorry, the question was, what do you think of this? Well, what I think of this is that my conclusion is that you're always going to be working for others unless you start your own business or get a lot of business that you can move to other firms. So if you work for others, then you're never going to really have security. That's one reason, like I do what I do, or made the decision after 3 years of practice that I didn't want to really participate anymore because I didn't see any security. I was in a firm called Dewey Ballantyne that had been a very prestigious firm. It was one of the top, I don't know, I'm not going to compliment myself more than I should, but it was one of the top New York law firms, top 10 or something, or whatever. I don't know exactly how it would fall in, but it was a top firm, and they had a Los Angeles office, and all these partners had been brought over from all these different firms. And so I was on this floor, and it was a big building, and on the floor I was at, there were probably, 10 or 12 partners. And within 1 year, the firm had let go like probably 8 of them, and that they'd let them go because decisions had been made in the New York office, and these people just weren't productive enough for what the firm needed now at a different point in time. And so they let them all go. And I was like, this is freaking horrifying. Like, wow. So I can be like in my 50s or 40s and whatever, and think I'm very secure in my career. And all of a sudden I lose everything. And these partners, a lot of them didn't take other jobs. They just employed, which is just completely terrifying to me. So I was like, this is not a job where I can have security. I was at my first firm, Quinn Emanuel, and everyone, they had so much work that they didn't need associates associates to bring in business. I mean, if anything, that was a distraction. So everyone was just competing how many hours they worked. And then I realized that if I just did that and was able to make partner just based on the amount of hours I worked, I would never have business. At least, if that was the only thing I could do. So I made the decision that was probably not a good place for me to stay. And the people that were there that didn't have any business that, kept doing that, and even if the ones that made partner, what happened to a lot of them is that the whole culture of the firm changed when they brought on a New York office, and then the leadership of the firm started kind of being run out of there, and the expectations. Then all of a sudden, all these people that had worked very hard and become partners lost their jobs or were kind of pushed out. So it's scary. So if you work for other people, I think I've given you several examples, people going in house, people going to government, people going working in law firms, unless you have some sort of business, then you're never going to be successful. And what do I think of it? I think it's terrifying. I mean, my own conclusion is, from done this for years, is that the only kind of employment security you're ever going to get is if you develop your own business. And so you can develop your own business by doing other things, by starting your own firm, or by learning how to develop business in whatever law firm you're in. So I hope that answers that. And thanks everyone for asking more questions, because I know I got cut off and lost my question. Okay, I would posit that in-house jobs are about as insecure as law firm jobs. The law firm model is to prevent associates from rising, not filter out the non-performers. Independent on a corporation as in-house counsel is no different than being dependent on a law firm. Law firms hate that. With respect to independence, that's why they're partners. I would disagree that clients are irrational and subjective. Clients are running businesses, and irrationality costs money and takes food off the table. It's an excuse. Law firm partners can be irrational to associates because the associates are worthless and replaceable. It is no cost to them to be irrational, at least in the short term. Yeah, so that's true. They can afford to be irrational with associates. It's interesting, though, that law firms are less likely to be irrational sometimes if the attorney that is working for them has incredible qualifications, like they went to Stanford or something or whatever, and did really well. A lot of times people are favored that have really good backgrounds or educational backgrounds. They're less likely to be irrational and subjective if the market is such that it's very hard to find associates, like sometimes happens when the corporate market, so they have to try to be really nice. And but yes, clients are running businesses, and being irrational can take food off the table, but at the same time, the clients can always find other firms that want their business. And so the attorneys sometimes have to jump over hoops to deal with that. And associates, worthless and replaceable, yeah, to a great extent, I think that's correct. But I think that firms do have their own cultures, and so if the firm is too difficult with people, that can affect their brand. Most associates are replaceable in law firms, unless they have like very unique skills, or there's something just very special about them that isn't worthless or replaceable. So sometimes I remember when I started, I had an attorney that was a patent attorney in Seattle. He had his own practice. It was pretty small, but he had very good qualifications. He was like an electrical engineer. And then back then there weren't as many patent attorneys as there are now. And it was very interesting. I remember he was getting an offer from Baker McKenzie, and then he came back and said, I've calculated the tax rates, the housing cost of living in San Jose or Palo Alto as opposed to living in Seattle. And even though they're paying me this much, we make it $50,000 less. So I went back to the firm. They said, okay, we'll give them an extra $50,000. And then he came back and said, I want another $50,000 because I'm going to have to move, and it's a different. And they came back and they said yes. And so back then they were actually, very nice to patent attorneys, but all that stuff changed over some time. But yeah, thank you for that observation. And thanks for all these questions. Amazing. Just really appreciate it. You raised a good point about government attorneys as well. The notion of job protection really means unearned value or income acquired through coercion, intimidation, or trickery, or government-sponsored state force. The problem, as with government attorneys, is misplaced expectations by associates. It's my view, a pathetic position to be in, not a prestigious one, to be a law firm associate, rather than to be treated like a full-fledged licensed attorney, which you are, instead of being treated like a small child and not being trusted with a good China clients and left to a toddler cage in the back office. Yes, I think all of that's true. So it's not necessarily a prestigious one. It's a very scary one. It's interesting when you say being treated like a full-fledged licensed attorney. If you go to different parts of the country, like where I grew up in Michigan, like if someone's parents were an attorney, that was a very big deal. And being an attorney was a very big deal. I mean, people, felt very important about being an attorney. Whereas if you're in LA or something and you tell people you're an attorney, they're just kind of like, whatever. Same thing in like New York, they don't care. So yes, attorneys, the value of them kind of goes down in some of the larger markets. And when you're in smaller markets, it's like a very prestigious profession and people look up to you, and but not necessarily the largest markets. Okay, let's see here. I think it's the last question. So if anyone doesn't have any questions, we'll break here. So give me 1 second. Okay, I think the inverse could be true about the attorney qualifications or your respect from partners. Many times partners with lesser qualifications will threaten and resentful associate better qualifications. They think, why introduce this arrogant Harvard Law, UVA law students, Stanford, et cetera, to my client? I could lose business telling them this instead of acknowledging that an associate might help compete them if I'm even playing field business, thus keeping them down. Well, I think there's a good point about that, but I think a lot of times what happens when people go to really good schools and then they work for people that don't go to the best schools. Yes, I think there's to a great extent, sometimes people that didn't go to the best schools and have other people working for them that did are threatened by it to some extent. So yes, or they don't feel, people become very proud of where they went to law school. And there is a pecking order, but I don't know about introducing the clients. In my experience, if someone that didn't go to the best school has other people working for them that went to better schools, they actually like telling clients that because it looks very good to the clients, having those kind of people work there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that partners think they're going to keep them down, not compete them. But, when you're working for someone else, if you're kind of criticizing their work and, making them feel badly about themselves and you're smarter than them, then that can upset them. A couple of things are kind of interesting. I'll just bring up 2 quick points in the webinar. I was one of the firms I worked at. There was a woman that was able to bring in business because she was head of the bar association and had all these great things that she'd done, but she'd gone to a law school that I hadn't even heard of before I got to this firm. And she wasn't that intelligent. Like, she wouldn't understand different legal matters. And so when she would get business and give it to an associate to work on, they would basically, sometimes she wouldn't even be able to understand what the conclusions were. And then the associate would get kind of almost condescending. I don't know what the word would be, but trying to explain it to her in very simple terms. And sometimes she still wouldn't understand it. So when that happened, like, that person would become her enemy. And then she would get them pushed out of the law firm, and she would just crush their confidence. In one case, there was a woman from Columbia Law School this happened to that became a waitress. And so sometimes, so if you get into a situation where you're making people feel badly about themselves because they don't understand things, you're smarter than them, then that can create problems. And so people need to be very careful about that. I got in a situation like that too in my career at one point, where I was working with someone that was a bad writer, and I picked up on that and started like marking up their stuff and showing them they were using improper grammar and punctuation and stuff. That made them very mad, and I thought it was kind of conveyed to them. I thought it was ridiculous. And then I had another attorney I made enemies with, it was a partner that was trying to get a certain result in a case, and he was using a case that had absolutely nothing to do with the matter, at least very almost like completely tangentially. And I got in an argument with him, and he turned to it. So yeah, this kind of stuff can happen a lot. And so people that go to better law schools shouldn't feel better than the people they're working with, or at least make that known to them. And then working for people that are smarter than you, or that you're smarter than, can also create various problems. All right, well, thanks everyone. Oh, no more questions. Why shouldn't a law firm partner's work be criticized by an associate? They could know their shit. Partner should thank the associate if catches a mistake. They can take all the credit and provide better services. To punish the associate for helping the partner by catching mistakes. This hatred of the good for being good. Key point is objectivism and study. So I had a situation happen a couple of years ago where there was a young associate from the University of Chicago Law School working for the Washington, D.C. office of a major New York law firm. And he was given an assignment by a junior partner that had just brought in a client and really wanted to build them a lot of money. he was told to spend a couple weeks like analyzing some legal issue. And then instead of analyzing the legal issue, he was able to come up, he's such a smart guy. He was like one of the top 5 students in his class at University of Chicago Law School. Instead of spending, 2 weeks or whatever amount of time billing the client researching this issue, he found a solution to this problem within a few hours and went to the partner with it. And the partner was very upset and said, keep going on this. And he said, no, I mean, why would I keep going on this issue if I've already reached a conclusion? And so then he kind of refused to do it, and the partner found someone else to do it, and they fired him, and he was like 6 months into his being an associate there. And so I had to, within 2 weeks, I got him interviews at Boy Schiller and Quinn Emanuel, and he got a job at Quinn Emanuel, but then he was conflicted out, and so he had nothing. He tried to get a job very, very quickly, and then I spoke to him, and he was like, I'm really disappointed. My father committed suicide. I'm afraid, I'm going to do so. I'm not going to practice law anymore. And then maybe 10 years later, like he applied in BCG again, and I saw his resume, and he'd been like a criminal attorney, like doing DUIs and stuff. So it's sad. So yeah, people do get punished often for being good attorneys. You just have to learn how to negotiate that. If someone tells you to do something, then you do it. I mean, you have to do what people want you to do. And yes, some people will punish you for this sort of stuff, and it's pretty ridiculous, but that's what happens. Okay. I'm just looking to see if there's. Yeah, so someone just another question about just an observation. Yeah, trust law firms, which I've served. So you say all the reason not to trust law firms or work for them. The law associate scribe offers an objectively superior service, and he should go out and compete with the idiot law firm partner who thinks overbilling clients is a good business model. The associate will not achieve success overnight, but rise to the top of the law firm. The in-up partner will sink clients fraud with perseverance. Yeah, so people that do dishonest things always catch us up with them. But at the same time, there's a really an article I'd recommend reading. It's on BCG. It's called "The Message to Garcia in Your Career." It's about a pamphlet that was given to people in the it was World War I or something, about this guy named Garcia, and he would give him an assignment no matter what it was. He wouldn't question it. He would just go out and do it. And most people aren't like that. They will find all sorts of excuses and criticize the person that's giving them, make the person feel stupid. Whereas this particular guy, you can give him an assignment to go into Cuba and go back past the front lines and deliver a message to this person deep in the jungle. And so you give him that assignment. He figures out how to get to Cuba, how to get to past the military there, go up in the mountains and do it, instead of like asking a million questions, which 95% of the people would do. So that sort of ability to do whatever people want you to do is valued. All right, well, thanks everyone for being in the meeting. I was very surprised that there was so much interest in this. Again, I thought that people would think this is just a marriage counseling session or something, but I think it's a great topic. I hope I save people a lot of poor decision making and help people know what's best for them. So thanks again, and I will talk to everyone next week.